Well, here we are again, here in Isaiah. Today we'll be in Isaiah 23, and we're closing out this section of judgment on the nations. Specifically in view here is a city called Tyre, often associated. There's two cities there, Tyre and Sidon. And these are on the Mediterranean coast. They're trading cities, very wealthy, have skilled sailors that ply the seas, the Mediterranean Sea, and trade with nations all around them. It's a located again right in this what's called Fertile Crescent, which is this area of fertility, fertile fields, fertile land, from Assyria through Jerusalem down to, or through Israel down to Egypt. And armies were constantly going back and forth. So Tyre and Sidon are in a place where armies often tread them underfoot. It's also true of Israel as well. Tyre is going to face destruction as well. So when we get into this in chapter 23, beginning in verse 1, he says, "Wail, O ships of Tarshish." This is a reference to Tyre. "For Tyre is laid waste, without house or harbor. From the land of Cyprus it is revealed to them." Your Bibles may say a little something different. Kittim might say, well, we don't know exactly what that is. It could be Cyprus, could be Crete. Talks about Tarshish. Tarshish might be as far away as Spain. So I think is what he's talking about are typical trading centers in the Mediterranean, and they should be weeping and wailing because Tyre, who has been facilitating this trade among them, is being laid waste. We see, "Be still, O inhabitants of the coast, the merchants of Sidon who cross the sea have filled you, and on many waters your revenues was the great grain of Shihor and the harvest of the Nile. You were merchants of the nations, but be ashamed, O Sidon, for the sea has spoken, the stronghold of the sea, saying, I have neither labored nor given birth. I have neither reared young men nor brought up young women. When the report came to Egypt, they were in anguish." So here we see barrenness in Tyre and Sidon. We see this as symbolic of their destruction. They're being brought low. And places as far away as Egypt are lamenting that, and there's anguish and grief. Cross over to Tarshish. "Wail, O inhabitants of the coastland." Again, this may be as far as way as Spain, and they'll be lamenting in Spain over what's happened. Just widespread sorrow over the destruction of the city and the destruction of this seaport. So why has this happened? Who has purposed this against Tyre, the bestower of crowns? Whose merchants were princes? The Lord has purposed it, in verse 9. So here we have this exalted city, this very rich city, the city that's full of prideful, rich people. God is showing again his sovereignty. He's bringing judgment against them. "Cross over your land like the Nile, O daughter of Tarshish. There is no restraint anymore." So they have been destroyed. Like verse 11 here, he says, "He has stretched out his hand over the sea. He has shaken the kingdoms. The Lord has given command concerning Canaan to destroy its stronghold." What are you talking about here? Canaan is the land of Israel. Is he talking about stretching his hand over the land of Israel? I don't think so. I think what he's using here is Canaan is kind of a picture of a land of destruction, the ancient battleground that God waged war on with Joshua at the lead. And he's saying that this Mediterranean area, these coastlands, Crete, Cyprus, Tarshish in Spain, Egypt and the Nile, they've all become as if they were the land of Canaan, a battleground for the Lord. He goes on to say, "Behold, the land of the Chaldeans." So this is the source of the invasion that's bringing destruction on Tyre. God is not only, or Isaiah, the Lord through Isaiah, is not only predicting the fall of Tyre and Sidon, but he's saying who his tool is to do that. It's the Assyrians, the Chaldeans. This is the people that was not. Assyria destined it for wild beasts. They erected their siege towers. They stripped her palaces bare. They made her a ruin. O wail, O ships of Tarshish. Again, calling for lament here for what's happened. But in a surprising turn of events, in verse 15, we see the Lord is going to restore Tyre. He says, in that day, Tyre will be forgotten for 70 years, like the days of one king. At the end of 70 years, it will happen to Tyre as in the song of the prostitute. Take a harp, go about the city, O forgotten prostitute. Make sweet melody, sing many songs that you may be remembered. Well, what's going on here? The Lord is restoring Tyre 70 years after its destruction, and they are being put back, he says here, as the song of a prostitute. What the song is saying is that the prostitute is back in business. He's not talking about so much about the morality of the city, but the fact that like a prostitute who is willing to be with anyone for a particular amount of money, so Tyre and Sidon will be back trading with anyone who would pay them. So they will be back and they will be established. Why is this? We see this in verse 17 and 18. At the end of the 70 years, the Lord will visit Tyre, and she will return her wages and prostitute herself with all the kingdoms of the world on the face of the earth. Her merchandise and her wages will be, interesting, holy to the Lord. What's he talking about here? How is the wages of a prostitute going to be holy to the Lord? Let's think of holy as not only as set apart, that her wages are going to be set apart. And what we see here is a prediction and maybe the beginning of predictions that's made throughout the Bible about the wealth of the nations coming to Jerusalem, the wealth of the nations being brought into the city. See this in particularly when at the end of the Bible, verses chapter 22 of Revelation, that we see nations on earth, and there still be nations on earth. Their kings will be bringing treasure into Jerusalem. So this will continue on into the millennium, and this is the beginning of it, is that just like Hiram used the wealth of Tyre to help Solomon build the temple, so the wealth of Tyre and Sidon is going to be taken and used by the Lord. So there we have chapter 23, this prophecy concerning the nation of Tyre, and concluding the prophecies that had to do with the judgments of the nations. Now Isaiah is going to move into, as I said earlier, another section of the book, a section that has to do with what's called the little apocalypse. I'll introduce it. I'm looking at some notes here that I made. I'll introduce this a little bit more, but this is, it's called the little apocalypse because it appears to be about the end times in just a few chapters. So we'll talk about that next time. God bless you, brothers and sisters.